All right. So we talked about in the first part of this lecture in chapter 1 what the value is of water quality. And I think it's important to think about from the point of view of humans and how we value the system, because that's something that makes it so we can justify protecting water and also understand why it's important to us. So an area of economics called environmental economics has emerged maybe starting in the 60s, but in the 1990s, Costanza and a group of economists put a value on the global value of ecosystems. And then they updated that more recently, and the reference will be at the end of this. And what they did is they had a variety of different services, provisioning services, cultural, water environmental quality, and regulating services, things that, like regulating the atmosphere, providing water, things that control ecosystem services that are valuable to humanity. And so, for example, they put a global values of wetlands at $26.4 trillion per year. This is for things like purification of water. We'll find out that they denitrify and get rid of excess nitrogen. They're a great habitat for wildlife, so you can get spawning of fishes and things like that. So there's a whole variety of things that they do. They also provide flood control, which otherwise we'd have to pay to put dams in. So there's some values there. Rivers and lakes, $2.5 trillion per year. Flood control, water supply, waste treatment are some of the things that these rivers and lakes and wetlands do. So for example, we have, we'll go to the wastewater treatment plant. In the 60s, the Kansas River was really unswimmable, and you really shouldn't have gotten even non-contact recreation was not okay. And that's because all the municipalities, from Junction City where it forms on down, were just dumping raw sewage in there. And so it's going almost anoxic, and there's a lot of bacteria in there. And over history, that's the way people dealt with a lot of their sewage, and rivers self-purified. But as we overloaded them, we had to squeeze that into sewage treatment plants, and they cost money. So basically it's providing a value. The environment is providing a value, cleaning the water for us, that now we have to basically supplant by putting a sewage treatment plant in. So that's kind of an example of that. Some of the things are kind of difficult to put a value on. People are willing to pay for clean water. In the last lecture, we talked about the fact that you pay a water bill to get clean water in your house. If you don't like the taste of the water, many people will buy bottled water. So we pay for clean water directly. The people will pay more for a house that's on a clear lake than they will for a house that's on a dirty lake. And actually, cities near clear lakes have higher property values than cities near lakes that are more algal polluted as well. So you can also quantify that as well. In addition, people will spend a lot of money on boats. They'll spend money on fishing licenses, fishing gears. They'll take trips. They'll buy hotel rooms and all those kinds of things. Pay park permits. You can quantify all those things as dollar amounts that people will use water for. In addition, there's some other values. 40% of the world's crops are fertilized. There's a lot of aquaculture, particularly in South and East Asia. People supplant a lot of their protein with aquaculture. Fisheries are quite important, particularly in developed countries as well, where it can be a very important source of protein. Can you think of any more values of water that I'm not mentioning here?
Transporting things internationally, and I guess probably domestically to some extent.
Yeah, there's active barge traffic on the Mississippi River. They haul a lot of freight up the Mississippi River every year. So, and historically that was way more important, right? So why is Kansas City where it is situated now?
It's on a river.
It's on not a river, but it's a, or why is St. Louis where it is? even maybe even more important, or the same reason-ish, down the same lines. What's the flowing water near St. Louis? Anybody know that?
It's the junction of Missouri and Mississippi.
Yeah, thanks, Maxwell. Perfect. Yeah, so it was a vital transportation hub, right? And some people were going to go up the Missouri and haul stuff up that way, or even Lewis and Clark, when they started, they went to St. Louis and then they went up the Missouri River, right? So many of our major cities in the world are basically on rivers, and oftentimes where rivers meet oceans if they're coastal, so you can get inland transportation. Obviously less important now that we have rail and motor transport. What else? What are some other values that people might have for fresh water? And some of our fisheries people, why are you in fisheries? Other than just plain out fishing, which is clearly recreation. Audra said power, steam, and hydraulic power. That's correct. More water means more power. So that's a really important in particular parts of the world.
Do you have to use fresh water for hydraulics?
You don't, except for so you can use wave action, but you do need gravity, right? So it needs to be flowing water. That means that it's going to be fresh water. It could be saline water, but for the most part, it's fresh water. Yes.
So maybe also swimming pools is all I can think of.
Sure, that would be recreation. That would be recreation.
Like,
I mean, I guess so. Why are you guys, fascinated by streams? What or lakes?
Because the stream by my house, I've never lived by one, but because it's there, there's so many different plants and cattails and toads, just stuff that would not be there if the fresh water wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, basically it's an important place for biodiversity, right? And so I know many of us were fascinated by turning over rocks in streams, or just seeing what the organisms were that were there. So it's a place where biodiversity is stored. And Jaden has that. Fresh water equals more species. Water to clean everything, right? Domestic water, we're paying for clean water. So there's a whole variety of ways that it's important. And this is the reference for the recent update. The interesting thing that we have here is that if we look at the value of so these are the areas: erosion control, water regulation, water supply, waste treatment, biological control, habitat, refugia, food production, raw materials, and recreation, the major areas. And the value per unit area is given here. And we see that wetlands have about $25,000 per year per hectare. Of $2,000 per year per hectare. So quite a bit of value, maybe more value than lakes and rivers, but still these are among the most valuable. If you compare these to the terrestrial habitats, most of them are not nearly as valuable per unit area. So even though we have an extraordinarily small portion of the Earth's surface, of the terrestrial surface, is covered by fresh water, because it's so valuable per unit area, they're really important as far as the global values. And so the global values are times 10 to the ninth, right? So million, billion, trillion, right? And they're very high. There's, if we look at the entire value of ecosystem goods and services, it's actually more than the global gross domestic product. That is, so economists sometimes say, how can that be worth more than all the money on earth? Well, it's because it's an intrinsic thing that it is being supplied to us that we don't have to pay for directly. And that's part of the problem. We take it for granted. But it also means we can argue for the protection of these habitats.
Could I ask a question on the last one?
Sure, let me go back.
What was the purple section said cultural? What kind of things does that refer to that's not like recreation or farming or?
Um, yeah, so some people it's part of their religion that there's like there's for example in India going to the Ganges and um, bathing in there is a religious ritual. So people think places are sacred to them, right? Um, and much of what we maybe it slops over into recreation. You Many of the people that are going to parks and such would like to just go canoeing. So they're recreating, you could say on one hand, or maybe they're communing with nature. So people put a value on that, right?
Have you ever heard of Gouda Springs? It's like
No.
a spring in Kansas that people go to for its healing powers.
Oh yeah, they're all over the world. So that would be another not recreational but a cultural or a cultural value. So that's a really good example. Thanks for that one.
Hmm.
All right. So it's so valuable that people fight over water, and there have been a number of wars or skirmishes or battles or conflicts between countries. And there's a database, and you can get the citation in the book for the database of the number of conflicts per year that are revolve around supply of water. So, for example, it's an old trick, right? If there's a city that's under siege, then the people that are putting under siege cut the river off that's coming in to supply them water, and so they better have a well or they're in big trouble. But now it's whole countries that are having conflicts over that. We have legal conflicts. We in Kansas sue Nebraska for the water quality and quantity in the Blue River. We sue Colorado for the water quality and quantity in in in
Arkansas River.
yeah, Arkansas River. Sorry, just had a mental blank there. And Oklahoma is suing us over the Arkansas River for how much water and what quality it is coming out of Kansas. But when you have different countries, they oftentimes result to violent or more intense conflict than even a legal battle. So those have as water becomes more limiting and there's more people. Can you all see my cursor when I do this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we just have more conflicts, and so that's as there was more people, and we use more and more of the water that will be, and we cover more of the Earth's surface. That's going to become more and more important.